Going through the demo there, Savo, there's one thing that I noticed was the quick actions. And, Mark, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how the quick actions and the Copilot in general is being integrated with the other features we have as, what we started as really at Pieces as an intelligent code snippet manager.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Cole. And Savo, wonderful demo. And Brian, oh my gosh, so pumped to get my hands on the local LLM on my own computer, so I don't have to be pinging out to ChatGPT anymore.
Gotta keep that data safe.
That's right. That's right. So some of those additional features, such as like what we like to call hints, those questions, really help you inform, where to go next without having to think about it yourself. Or, what was that one question that I wasn't thinking about that's going to help me ask it in the better way? Right. So like starting out as a developer years back, I remember one of the biggest problems when we didn't have generative AI was going to Google. It's not about whether you can find it or not, but it's how you ask the question. So you'll ask one question, you'll get a completely different set of results. So that feature just right there is a nice little tidbit to keep you going in that generative AI flow. Another thing that I thought that was really awesome in the demo that helps solve one of the initial problems that I introduced in the beginning was that tool between tools. So that staying in that workflow from your research flow, from looking through your thousands and thousands of developer tabs to hopping in your Pieces for Developers desktop app to be able to curate, add your tags, add your descriptions, add X, Y, and Z, to then going to your IDE and then being able to stay in that IDE without having to switch back over to the browser and find what website was it where I found that one solution, but having that immediately available to you at your fingertips.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, for me, as one of the least technical person at Pieces, we're a large team of developers. My favorite feature is in the Copilot and in the auto enrichment view. You're able to get these related links. Let's say I generate a CSS snippet. And I want to learn about what it does. I mean, right off the bat, I get a title, I know what it is, a description tells me what it does, but I can also click out to related links that will help me learn more about the project, learn more about, the snippet and how I should use it within my project. And then you could just, take that URL, put it in a Copilot and ask it, set the context and have it be catered directly for your project. I mean, that's just awesome. So
yeah, and Cole, just to add to that, these related links that are on these snippets, when you launch a Copilot on a per piece basis, so like any one of these, the related links and the code snippet itself and all of that'll actually automatically be set as context for this snippet. So on this snippet right here, I can exit this Copilot, but you'll see what you're just talking about was I've got these descriptions, I've got these related links, etc. So you don't have to manually go through and add all these related links to the Copilot context. When you start them when you start a Copilot chat on something you have saved, all of this context right here and any extra context you add will already be kind of injected into that context window for the chat here, which is really nice.
Okay. So what about the annotations? I know that's a new feature in 6.0.0. If you add a comment or something, is that also regrounding the Copilot?
Yeah, so every bit of context on this code snippet is actually used to give the model background before it gives you a response. And that's actually how we're able to generate, for example, these initial follow-up questions where you're kicking it off. And it understands exactly what you should ask this thing, to kind of get you along. And then in our next release, this will also be available for every, follow-up question. So I'll click this one. It'll give me a response real quick. And then, after this, I'll get another set of these, which is specific to this. So again, in using all of that existing context, with the Copilot on this snippet, you're really looking solid with regards to do nothing and get the most refined results, without having to do heavy lifting and say this, answer the question, right? So the context
Yeah, context is key. And we actually, just launched our AI Copilot within VS Code. We had sort of a stealth launch there. Savo, does the interactions within VS Code also reground the Copilot, or is it just in the desktop application?
Yeah, that's right. So everything you're doing inside of VS Code, if I'm looking at this file right here, or if I have questions about the project, I can actually just, I can attach the Copilot over here. But my favorite thing is kind of using the command palette to, for example, search pieces or, kick off a conversation with your Copilot. So you can just focus on that. And then you can say, I need a unit test for a view component, right? And we'll see what this does. Now, this is a little bit interesting because it's actually using the same local model inside of Pieces OS. There we go. And so it's actually regrounding the model behind the scenes really, really quickly. To say, hey, what's the context now that I'm in VS Code versus what's the context when I'm in the desktop app. So I am on a staging build here, so I might have messed up the demo. That was my bad. But I'll show you as well. Like if you open up Obsidian, right? There we go. Nice. You have the same exact Copilot experience in here, where I'm looking at some Markdown docs that I was writing on lit element and rollup, and then boom, launch the Copilot. And I can say, how to unit test lit element. Let's see if that's gonna go there for me.
I think another thing as well that might be throwing a little bit of a wrench in our process right now is we actually have a little bit of a bug with regard to Markdown files. So if we're parsing a lot of Markdown files, it can cause a little bit of problems, but it looked like it came through.
Yeah, so it came through there. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. Sorry, I can't see most of the time, so I have my screen like 10x. But yeah, how to unit test this? Basically there's open web components testing, import this stuff, etc. It's giving me, suggested queries here for the follow-up. But my favorite part inside of Obsidian specifically, and this is also for VS Code, is these relevant files. So I could basically, launch this. And this is a note that I took. It's a little bit different. Here's another one that we have, which is another relevant file. And these are my own documents. So what you see is the Copilot is, obviously giving you a generated response, but it's looking at the current vault inside of Obsidian or the current files inside of VS Code and saying, hey, also look at this source code that exists. So it's really nice. It's really nice.
No, jump in there quickly. This is related to a question Brendan Reed just asked about the Obsidian, if we can tie into the Obsidian Data Vault plugin. I'm not super familiar with it. I've seen it in my understanding. It is like a query and indexing engine over your notes. Nice. So Brendan, right now, what Savita showed you, we are, I would say, like naively grabbing snippet context from all your notes. We're doing, that's as negative connotation. We are using some nice logic in there, but what we're doing is going through all of your notes and looking for snippet tags and pulling those out and using those as context. I can talk to our head of the Obsidian plugin, but I have no doubt that we can change where we're looking for those snippets. That would be much easier for us, frankly, if you told us exactly the snippets you wanted for context rather than us scraping your entire vault. And so we can totally look into that, and that's a great shout out there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And, I see in there Data Vault or repository. One thing to note as well, coming up in, I think, the second or third week of September, we'll have workspaces inside the desktop app, which are going to be, scoped again, like open source, this project, that project, whatever it is. And then also, too, you'll be able to set external repositories as, context, just like you set local directories as context. So from GitHub or Obsidian or things like that. But yeah, tool between tool, kind of bringing it back to the first part of that question. Our Copilot is in, I think, almost all of our plugins, which is great. That means you can use, that plugin offline, local language model, desktop app, whole 9 yards. And we're shipping a lot more plugins and Copilot experiences very, very quick. We're hustling.
Yes, we are.
If I may jump in really quick as well, another thing that I saw Savo do really quickly there is in VS Code, like back to how to ask the question and what to prompt here. like, according to my project or according to the context provided, how can I add XYZ? How can I add an additional action, or how can I add an additional endpoint that fits the same mold or that writes the exact same way? So you don't have to worry about any sort of like code quality, or you don't have to worry about writing a different way than maybe you would have in a different project, without having to sift through the entire repository, so that you're immediately onboarded and ready to go within any sort of project or team.
Yeah, and I'll not to beat a dead horse on this point, but the interesting thing about our Copilot is it sits at the operating system level, right? It's not in a single app, it's not in a single experience, it's across all your experiences. So, our Copilot is able to understand who you're working with. It's able to understand, what websites you were researching that are relevant to this code snippet, or what conversation you just had inside of Microsoft Teams. So when you go over to your VS Code experience, it's not just looking at what am I seeing in VS Code? It's looking at what were you just doing in that 2-3 hours, prior, before you ran into this problem or before you started writing this code. And it's all like super related. And I know like people get concerned about privacy. That's why we put such a large emphasis on this being like air gapped on device, like turn off your Wi-Fi, use this thing. I promise you, we're not in the business of data mining or things like that. We're just trying to make world-class tools. So,
yeah. So, we've covered a lot of awesome information so far, and I really appreciate you doing that demo there for us, Sava. But I want to open it up to the audience and answer some questions. Thank you guys so much for submitting some questions ahead of time. We'll take care of those. We might have to do a little bit of rapid fire through them since we're getting close to time here. But at the end, we'll also give away a few gift card prizes for those of you that sent some questions in advance. So again, really appreciate you helping to shape the vision of Pieces. So please throw some more questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. But let's start it off the top. I'll send this one to you, Brian. The related people suggestions and connectivity features seem like a major evolution in AI-assisted collaboration. How does Pieces Copilot identify expertise areas for different team members?
Sure. So for everyone, the example I think this would come up in is you send a message in the Copilot chat, and in the response it gets a list of related people. How we do that internally, this is all ML. First thing we do, we look at your question, and then I think it's a pretty cool solution. We generate like ghost or example snippets based on your question. So we want to say and then we take those snippets and we embed them into a kind of mathematical representation that we can then compare to the snippets that your teammates have uploaded to their pieces. So we have a representation of a user in some embedding space. We look at the question you asked and what snippets it's kind of like, and we see which user, which team member is this question closest to in a mathematical space, an embedding space, and we return those users. And we do the same thing. That's very, very similar to how we tag your code as well. We have an embedding space for tags that we've trained. So Python, JavaScript, web programming, generally we have everything. And when you upload a snippet, we embed that mathematically, and we have an embedding of a tag. And we say, how close is this code snippet to that tag? And that's how we return your list. And it's a pretty cool solution. And it's just the power of large language models and being able to kind of take this question and quickly use it. We query the language model to convert it into code, and it's just it's opened up a whole lot of avenues for behind the scenes work like that enables these features.
Yeah, and Brian, just to add on to that real quick, there's two important things to note, but to summarize all of that, it's just law of transitivity, right? A equals B, B equals C, A equals C, right? So we leverage that a lot and do like first degree, second degree network associations, as you just described. But I want to really just quickly mention on terminology, Brian says upload. It's hard for us to find the right words. Nothing is actually uploading to the cloud. It's actually just getting saved to a local database on your computer. Everything that you do upload, quote unquote, is opt-in and it's for sharing. So You have to have a login, and you have to, click generate shareable link, stuff like that. So small thing on the terminology there, Brian. I know we throw that term around on our side, but for the outside world. And then the last thing is this. You might wonder, okay, everyone has to be logged in so that Pieces understands, who's saving what and things like that. But we actually do a good bit of just clever, understanding, right? So when you're on a web page and you're on Medium or, Flutter or whatever, that publisher of that package, right? Or that author of that blog, or, whatever it is, our related people infrastructure is actually quite flexible, where it starts to operate on the least amount of information. It could just be a name. And then, over time, it's like, okay, we have an email, right? And then same goes for your GitHub, data, your Git data. So if you're in VS Code, you right click save to Pieces, or you engage the Copilot. You have Git blame, which is everyone's favorite tool. We actually use the same underlying technique there to understand who wrote this code, how long ago, who's most active, etc. All that is right there in your .git file. That's what we leverage. So actually, none of your teammates need to be actively using Pieces for you to benefit from those features. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Savo. I was going to mention that as well. The related people, we can't do much if you don't have any related people. We don't have access just to go ahead and find all the people that you're related to and so on, and find them in your organization, because we're local, we're on device. We can't do any of that. So in order to do that, we can do all that sort of fun stuff from your different plugins and aggregate all that sort of context. Another way that you can also do it is manually. So if you know that, hey, I just took this code snippet and I knew it was attached to XYZ, and I know that like Brian may be related to this project, or Dom may be related to this project, and so on, I can go ahead and add them so that when I proactively save in the future or automatically save, then we can run some of the related people engine behind the scenes and so on, as well as anything from shareable links. So if you do have another person on your team who's a Pieces user, then you can share with them and so on. And then you can almost start to swap related people. So you can have more and more context locally between different devices and so on.